Today on How It's Made. Bamboo bicycles, a typically English invention. The bike is, not the bamboo. Chainsaw art. Oh yes, we bring you all the cutting-edge creations. Breath mints. Don't worry, we'll have you kissing with confidence. And manual motorcycle transmissions. We're definitely going up a gear with this report. But first, the bamboo bicycle was invented in England in the 19th century, but the idea never really went anywhere until now. Today, the modern bamboo bicycle is a highly engineered piece of work that takes advantage both of bamboo's strength and flexibility. Sadly, though, you can't fold it up and take it on the train. At a time when bicycles are often made of high-tech carbon fibre and exotic alloys, the bamboo bike takes things in a whole new direction. Bamboo cane is a grass that's incredibly sturdy, and because it's fast-growing, the bicycle is as green as it gets. The frame builder starts by checking the bamboo to confirm that it's perfectly straight and structurally sound. He measures and marks each one to a precise length. To avoid fraying the edges or splitting exterior fibres, the cuts are made carefully. He smooths the bamboo against a drum sander and tapers the end for fitting in steel joints. Once satisfied with the fit, he removes the bamboo canes from the steel joints. He sprays an acetone cleaning solution into the joints and then scrubs with a wire brush to prepare them for bonding to the bamboo canes. A total of 5 steel joints will hold the frame together. Now for assembly. He probes the cavity of each bamboo cane to confirm there are no obstructions and to determine how far inside to insert a foam plug. This plug will prevent adhesive from running through the entire cane during the bonding process. Using a long syringe, he injects fast-setting epoxy adhesive into the cane. This seals the plug to the inside wall of the bamboo cane. Once plugs have been installed in all the canes, he snakes plastic tubing through the steel joints and corks the gaps. This tubing is a delivery system for the next application of epoxy adhesive that will seal the steel joints to the bamboo framework. With plastic tubing now installed in all the steel joints, he reassembles the bamboo bicycle frame and checks the fitting. This is known as the dry fit. It's one last chance to perfect the fit at the joints. Most frames need at least a little tweaking at this stage. Once just right, he secures the bike frame in a jig. He inserts a bit of epoxy putty between the bamboo cane and the steel joint. It acts as a wedge to center the cane in the fitting. He then wraps electrical tape around the gaps where the steel joints meet the bamboo canes. The tape is lightly tacky so it won't pull up bamboo fibres when it's removed, yet the seal is strong enough to keep epoxy adhesive from dripping out, as he now injects it into one of the joints. He cuts a tiny slit in the tape to monitor the flow, and when epoxy starts to leak out, he knows there's enough for a full bond. He tapes up the slit to close off the overflow, and clamps the end of the plastic tubing with a clothes peg. He injects epoxy into all 5 joints. Once all the gaps have been filled, he leaves the assembly to dry. 12 hours later, he unbinds the joints. They're now solidly fused to the bamboo, holding the frame together. The plastic tubing has bonded to the inside of the joints too. He just cuts the ends. He grinds off the excess epoxy for a smoother transition from the steel to the bamboo. Once the bike frame has been cleaned and engraved with the brand name, he stains the bamboo with a polyurethane finish. This seals the pores of the bamboo against water damage and enhances the texture of the woody fibres. He paints the joints with car paint, and it's now ready for a set of wheels. This bamboo bicycle frame has been 40 hours in the making and is ready for an owner. Fascinating. Now, on your bike. When the chainsaw came on the scene in the 1920s, it revolutionised the forestry industry. From then on, it was only a matter of time before some creative lumberjacks had a new idea: to use the chainsaw like a sculptor's chisel and make art. And like the famous Venus de Milo, it's just a bit of armless fun. These chainsaw sculptures range from cartoon-like characters to realistic reproductions of wildlife. The artistic endeavour does come with significant risk. One wrong move with the chainsaw can cause serious injury. By official request, this particular logger artist cuts down bugwood, pine trees killed by mountain pine beetles. Brandishing a chainsaw with a 40cm blade, he'll transform this log into a turkey. The first cut forms a higher back, which will eventually become the tail feathers. The second cut establishes the top of the head. Then he cuts away wood in between to begin shaping the body. He removes wood from the front to begin forming the turkey's beard and breast. Then he removes wood from the sides to shape the wings. And this is a turkey in strutting pose. The wings are thrusting downward. After shaping the breast further and carving the feet, the chainsaw is exchanged for a pencil and he outlines 19 tail feathers. Then he gently carves his lines with the tip of a chainsaw. He also carves the outlines of the feathers located under the tail feathers. Then using the tip ever so lightly, he makes delicate lines inside each feather. With the rough shape now complete, he begins working on the finer details, such as sculpting each wing feather. Then he carves some even finer details with a die grinder, a tool which can use interchangeable bits. He uses a cone-shaped bit to carve the turkey's feet. Then a sanding disc to work on the breast. Then a small wheel to carve the lower breast feathers. Now he tackles the snood, which is that flap of skin over the turkey's beak. He makes it curved rather than hanging straight down to make the turkey look as though it's moving. To craft the eyes, he uses a tool that he made himself by attaching a modified bolt to a die grinder. The eyes are the artistic turning point as they add the first hint of facial expression. Using the cone-shaped bit again, the artist shaves off wood underneath the eyes, which means they'll protrude slightly. Then using a variety of bits, he does some touch-ups on the snood. And he also sculpts the sack of skin under the turkey's neck. Then he brands small circles on the skin sack to add visual texture. With the carving now complete, the burning begins. Using a small gas torch, he scorches the wood. The raised areas become darker than the recessed areas, giving the feathers contrast and depth. The last step is some finer detail texturing. He attaches a soft wire brush to a drill and smooths out the tips of the feathers. He coats the finished carving in a sealer, a homemade concoction of equal parts of white spirit, heavy-duty marine varnish and boiled linseed oil. This sealer gives the surface a rich semi-gloss luster, but more importantly it protects the wood against the elements, which is critical given that these carvings are usually displayed outdoors. It forms a suit of armour against rain and the sun's ultraviolet rays. Yet the sealant isn't an airtight shield. It still lets the wood breathe, which is critical for preventing mould growth. It's also flexible, moving with the natural expansion and contraction of the wood. An inflexible sealant would crack, letting water seep in. So whatever the logger artist decides to create, whether it be bear, totem pole or bird, this durable protective finish will help turn a right turkey into an investment piece that I'm sure someone will gobble up. Coming up, we're going to relocate to a gear-making factory, and we'll be making a transmission from there. And we'll also be getting a little bit fresh with you after we've seen how breath mints are made. Join us after the break. Bad breath is not good for your social life, but suck on a mint and you can breathe a sigh of relief. Mint sweets were first introduced in Britain in 1790, initially used to soothe indigestion. Later, the breath-freshening qualities were discovered, and they became known as breath mints. At the factory, they make these tablet-style mints in various colours and flavours. For a lime-flavoured mint, ingredients include sorbitol, a sugar-free sweetener, magnesium stearate, which acts as a binder, and lime oil for that refreshing flavour. They load measured amounts of the ingredients into a V-shaped blender. The green stuff is a premix of colour and oil. screws the lid tightly onto the blender. It tumbles the ingredients for 45 minutes. The magnesium stearate begins to bind the various elements. Then they mix blue and yellow pigment to produce a vibrant green one. The pigment is a booster to enhance the green colour of the mint and the lime flavour. After one more spin in the blender, the mixture is ready to be pressed. It flows out of the blender and into a bin. Once the bin is full, they deliver it to the tablet pressing machine. Here, they scoop the mix into two hoppers that have sieves on top. The sieves screen out any large clumps. The rest of the mix falls into the rotary tablet press. This is the same kind of machine that the pharmaceutical industry uses for making pills. It spins in a blur to punch out 1,800 tablets a minute. They slow the press to a crawl to give us a close-up look. The granulated mixture flows in metered amounts into dies in the rotating wheel. Upper and lower punches meet in the dies to compress the ingredients. This fuses the mixture into hard tablets. After the compression, the lower punches rise and eject the sweets. The mints and the excess powder fall down the chute. At actual speed, the machine churns out dozens of mints faster than the blink of an eye. The tablets and all the excess powder now flow into a perforated cylinder. As the cylinder rotates, the powder flies out of the holes and into the trough below. This is known as de-dusting. The mints, minus most of the excess powder, spill out into a container. Next, the mints ride a revolving table. This is a tablet counting system. As the mints exit the table, light sensors count out a preset amount of mints for packaging, in this case, 72 mints. A worker moves tins into position below the hoppers to capture the mints. This kind of tin has been used since the 1920s. It has a sliding lid that makes it easy to open. But once closed, it contains them tightly, preventing spillage. Now it's over to the shrink wrap department. Machinery drops a plastic sleeve onto each tin as it rides by and under a levelling bracket. The tins then travel through an oven, where a blast of heat softens the plastic sleeves, causing them to shrink around the tins. They emerge securely sealed and ready for retail. Today these sweets can come in exotic shapes, like these wine bottle mints. It's a nice touch, and we're in no doubt that customers will love the idea too. Hopefully, they'll buy them by the truckload, ensuring that this company really does make a mint. The transmission in a motorcycle multiplies the power coming from the engine to move the bike down the road at faster and faster speeds. The vast majority of motorcycles have a manual transmission, so it's up to the rider to operate a lever to shift into lower or higher gears as required. Let's kickstart the report. Most manual motorcycle transmissions have a push-button electric starter, but some bikers still prefer this old-school transmission with a kickstarter. The transmission case is made from aluminium that's been extruded to a starting shape. A saw cuts a piece to the case length. Then a series of computer-guided tools hollow out the inside and bore a pocket to hold the bearing in which the main drive gear turns. The main drive gear is what takes the power out of the transmission, eventually driving the rear wheel of the motorcycle. Once polished, the transmission case is ready to receive its 100+ components. Workers assemble the bearing in which the main shaft turns, transferring power from the engine to the transmission. Using a press, they push this bearing into a bearing housing, then bolt it in place, immobilizing the bolt with a few drops of permanent thread-locking fluid. Then right next to the main shaft bearing, workers bolt the bearing in which the countershaft turns, multiplying the power which the main shaft transfers from the engine to transmission. They press in a pin, which helps accurately position this housing when it comes time to bolt it to the transmission. They apply thread lock to secure the bushing that holds one of two rods for the bike's gear forks. Then what the rider manipulates to move each gear into a predetermined position. They suspend the second rod between the housing and the transmission case. They install the countershaft to the countershaft bearing. Unlock it in with the press. Then workers assemble what's known as the gear set. This is a 6-speed gearbox, meaning there are 6 gears on the main shaft and 6 on the countershaft. Each gear is held to its shaft by a high-strength steel retaining ring that's plated with yellow zinc to make it easy to verify that it's in the right position. The bearings are lubricated to ensure they rotate smoothly around the shafts. Putting the gear set aside for now, it's back to the press once again. This time to install the main drive gear bearing into the pocket that was bored in the transmission case. The red disc provides a cushion to prevent the press from damaging the component. Next, they press the main drive gear in the bearing. They slide the gear set into the transmission case and secure it with 9 knots. They apply semi-permanent thread lock to each knot, so they can be unscrewed in the future should the gear set need to be removed for repair. Meanwhile, a computer-guided mill machines the gear drum out of a super durable steel. The drum rotates when the rider changes gear, moving the gears. After coating it in black oxide to protect against corrosion, they install it on top of the transmission case. They assemble the kickstarter. When the rider kicks it, a series of gears rotate the main shaft inside the transmission. The main shaft is also connected to the engine, so this rotation starts the engine. The kick arm itself is stainless steel, the pedal bronze. Both types of metal are durable enough to withstand a good kicking, and are resistant to corrosion too. For demonstration purposes, this transmission case has been cut away to show what happens inside when the rider changes gear. The gear drum rotates 30 degrees to pull the transmission out of one gear, then another 30 degrees to put it into another. A perfectly engineered piece of mechanical choreography. And now you know how it's made. That is transmission over.